The Valar High Delegate, Tethys Atrid, called the HFS Anvil an insult to the very concept of physics, and he had the calculated audacity to say it to Captain Kalen Rourke's face. They stood in the gleaming, pressurized observation dome of the Prismati Trade Hub, a station so impossibly clean and white it hurt Kale's eyes. It was carved from a single moon-sized asteroid of pure phase crystal, a monument to the Signian Compact's artistry and the wealth of the inner ring. Outside the dome, against the velvet black of space, floated the Valar flagship, the Luminous Current. It was less a ship and more a piece of living jewelry, a multi-winged, iridescent vessel that seemed to sing to the local stars' light, riding on subspace currents that Kale's own sensors couldn't even detect. It was beautiful. It was silent. It was parked with deliberate, condescending grace right next to the anvil. The anvil was neither beautiful nor silent. She was a 400-meter block of utility gray, carbon-scored, asymmetrical metal. She was ugly, and she was loud. Her fusion reactor hummed at a frequency that made the Valar's delicate crystalline forms visibly resonate with discomfort. Her maneuvering thrusters, which still used a primitive, chemical-assist propellant, had left a faint, oily blue stain on the Prismati hub's pristine docking arm. A tiny, almost imperceptible leak of steam was venting from a dorsal heat sink. To Kale, it smelled like home. To the galaxy, it looked like a junkyard. "We are here, High Delegate," Kale said, his voice a low, steady rumble that contrasted with the Valar's chiming, melodic speech. He kept his hands clasped behind his back, his simple, dark gray fatigue uniform a stark contrast to Tethys Atrid's shimmering, light-woven robes. "We delivered the epic core to the Signian archivists as agreed, on schedule." "The delivery is not the issue, Captain Rourke," Tethys chimed. The sound was pleasant, but the words were sharp. "The method is, your vessel, it is a blight. It pounds its way through subspace, creating a wake of temporal distortion that scrambles trade routes for weeks. It leaks hard radiation. The Signian dock workers must wear physical shielding just to approach it. It is brutish." A small crowd of delegates from other species had gathered, the amphibious Hylotl, the silicon-based Jaskar, and a few of the diminutive insectoid Kathur. They were watching. They were listening. Kale could feel the collective, amused disdain. Humanity was the new species on the block, the loud, clumsy, industrial teenagers who had just moved into a quiet, ancient neighborhood. "The Anvil is a Fortitude-class freighter, High Delegate," Kale replied, his eyes never leaving the Valars. "She's not a pleasure yacht. She was built to move heavy cargo through the unharmonized zones. She's shielded, she's sturdy, and she's reliable. We apologize for the aesthetic dissonance." Tethys Atrid's crystalline form rippled. A motion Kale had learned was the Valar equivalent of an arched eyebrow. "Aesthetic dissonance. Captain, your ship is a catastrophe. I have seen the schematics you were forced to submit to the hub's traffic control. You still use kinetic slug throwers for point defense. You have 3 meters of ablative hull plating instead of standard energy shields. And your FTL, by the first star, you detonate a cascading singularity. It is barbaric. It is laughable. How does it even maneuver?" "We manage," Kale said, his jaw tightening. A Hylotl delegate, floating in his personal suspensor tank, gurgled a laugh. "Is it true, Captain, that your bridge is not a Gestalt mind interface, but a room full of buttons and levers?" Kale turned to him. "We call them consoles, and yes, they're reliable." "But what if the lever breaks?" The Hylotl bubbled, delighted with his own wit. "Then we have another one," Kale said flatly. The laughter in the dome was quiet, but it was there. It was the polite, tittering laughter of an old, established order that had found a new, amusing jester. Look at the humans. They play at being a spacefaring race, but they still push things. "Captain," Tethys Atrid said, his tone shifting from amusement to command. "The Valar hegemony on behalf of the Inner Ring Compact formally requests that humanity ground its Fortitude-class vessels. They are a menace to civilized travel. Until you can develop clean, FTL, and harmonious energy signatures, your ships are restricted to your own underdeveloped star system." This was it. This was the real reason for the meeting. This wasn't a protest. It was a censure. Kale felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. He'd spent 20 years on the Anvil. He'd been born on a Fortitude-class ship. They were the ships that had clawed humanity up from the ashes of a near-extinction event on Terra. They were ugly, yes. They were loud, but they worked. "With respect, High Delegate," Kale said, his voice dropping, "the HFS Anvil is a commissioned vessel of the Human Federation Starfleet. We are not a freighter. We are a warship, and we do not take orders from you." The laughter died instantly. Tethys Atrid's light form seemed to dim. A warship! You dare bring a warship to the Prismati hub? Against what, Captain? The silence you so despise, the peace that you find so inconvenient. We are a Starfleet ambassador, Kale said, using the title as a weapon. The war part is just in case the star part gets complicated. We are a peaceful species, but we are not a pacifist one. We came here in good faith. We delivered the Epic Core, a piece of our own recovered history, as a gift. And in return, we are mocked and censured by a delegate who has never known a single day of want or fear or war. The tension in the dome was now as thick as the anvil's hull plating. The Cygnian hub master, a tall, reed-thin being named Prelate Orin, stepped forward, his own iridescent skin pale. Delegates, Captain, please, this is a place of Concord. We are all friends. Are we, Prelate? Kale asked, turning his gaze to the Cygnian. Or are we just customers? The anvil is docked. We will be reprovisioning, and then we will be leaving. We will, of course, try not to scuff the station's paint on our way out. He turned on his heel, his heavy-duty mag boots clamping audibly on the pristine crystal floor with every step. It was a deliberate sound. It was the sound of mass. It was the sound of function. His XO, Commander Eva Sparky Tolson, was waiting for him at the airlock. She was small, wiry, and had a shock of bright red hair that defied regulation. She was also the best dirty drive engineer in the fleet. She had a data slate in her hand and a grim look on her face. So, she said, not even bothering with a salute, did they laugh, Kale? Like we were the funniest thing they'd seen all year, Kale growled, pulling off his dress jacket and throwing it over a console. The anvil's bridge was not a room of levers. It was a combat information center. It was dark, smelled of ozone and recycled coffee, and was packed with holographic displays that flickered with unharmonized data. It was, however, full of real, physical, redundant toggle switches. They just can't get over it, Eva muttered, tapping at her slate. They've had anti-gravity and clean fusion for 1,000 years. They've forgotten what it's like to have to fight physics. They think we're stupid for using ablative plating. What's the status, Sparky? Reprovisioning is done. The Sins were very happy to get us out of their clean cargo bay. They triple-charged us for the decontamination, by the way, she grimaced. And we got a new directive from Terrasol Command. Priority 1. It came in while you were being mocked. She handed him the slate. Kale's face went from angry to cold. Ethel's Rest, that's a joint colony, Cygnian and human, in the Gordian Vale. Went dark, Eva said. Total comms blackout, no beacon, no distress call, just silence. It's on the edge of the Vale, nasty territory. The Anvil is the closest registered Federation vessel. Closest or just the only one they'll risk, Kale muttered. He looked at the coordinates. The Gordian Vale was a nightmare. A chaotic, roiling nebula of micro-singularities, dust clouds, and subspace fractures. The Valar and their clean ships wouldn't go near it. Their delicate sensors would be instantly blinded. Their subspace sailing ships would be torn apart. But the Anvil was built for this, Kale said, a new grim light in his eye. She's a brick. That veil won't break her. It'll just slow her down. The Valar are going to hate this, Eva said, a small, vicious smile on her face. We have to detonate the Cascade Tunneler right in their backyard to get a clear shot at the Vale. Kale looked out his viewport. The luminous current was still there, glowing with self-importance. Good, Kale said. Tethys Atrid wanted to see our barbaric FTL. Let's give him a show. He hit the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain, secure for Cascade. We are leaving, now. He strapped into his command chair, a heavy, over-engineered piece of metal and padding. Eva, spin the tunneler. I want a dirty jump. Maximum power, let's rattle the crystal. Aye, Captain, Eva grinned, her hands flying over a console, flipping a series of heavy, satisfyingly real switches. Spinning the barbaric drive, stand by to insult physics. The Prismati trade hub was not built for violence. Its delicate crystal lattices were tuned to harmonize with the subtle, clean frequencies of Valar and Cygnian FTL drives. The Anvil's Cascade Tunneler was the opposite of harmonious. Tunneler is at 90% charge? Eva Tolson shouted over the rising shriek that filled the bridge. The Anvil was not just humming, it was screaming like a banshee. The entire ship was vibrating, a deep, bone-jarring thrum that made the coffee in Kale's mug slosh, even in its mag-locked holder. All clamps released, the helm officer, Lieutenant Jin, reported, his knuckles white on his console. We are disturbing them, Captain. I'm getting all the angry messages. The hub is registering seismic activity. On the main view screen, the luminous current was visibly recoiling, its delicate subspace sails ruffling in the dirty energy the anvil was venting. Tethys Atrid himself was on the comm, his image flickering, his melodic voice distorted by pure rage. "This is unacceptable. You are damaging the hub. Cease this. This noise. Cease it." "Transmit our flight plan, Lieutenant," Kale ordered, ignoring the ambassador. "And send him our apologies for the aesthetic dissonance." "Aye, sir," Jin said, a tight smile on his lips. "Tunneler is at 100, Eva yelled. "On your mark, Kale." "Mark," Kale roared, slamming his hand down on the armrest, a purely human, physical gesture of commitment. It was not a jump, it was an eruption. A cascade tunnel didn't bend space, it broke it. A series of controlled micro-singularities detonated in sequence, punching a brute force hole through subspace. From the outside, the anvil didn't gracefully enter warp. It vanished in a flash of violent, multicolored light that looked like a star had just died. The shockwave of the jump, a wave of pure spatial displacement, hit the Prismati hub. On the hub, delegates were thrown from their feet. Crystal chimes shattered. The luminous current was spun 30 degrees, its harmonious shields flaring into a panicked, discordant rainbow. Tethys Atrid's feed cut to static, his final, chiming curse swallowed by the anvil's barbaric exit. For the crew of the anvil, the jump was just as violent. The bridge lights died, replaced by the red glow of emergency backup. The inertial dampeners screamed as they fought to keep the crew from being turned into paste. It felt, as it always did, like being thrown down a concrete staircase in a metal barrel. The transit lasted 9 seconds. It felt like an eternity. Then silence and blackness. The ship coasted. The emergency lights flickered, and then the main power returned with a thud. The view screen cleared. The pristine, ordered space of the inner ring was gone. They were in hell. The Gordian Veil. It wasn't a nebula in the classical sense. It was a cosmic junkyard, a place where the laws of physics came to fray. Outside the viewport was a swirling, toxic green and bruised purple miasma. Lightning, not of electricity but of pure temporal energy, flashed between bergs of crystallized, dead subspace. The anvil's hull was already groaning as microfractures in local reality scraped against the ablative plating. "Status," Kale said, his voice a low growl. He unstrapped from his chair, his body aching from the G-forces. "Drive is renormalizing," Eva said, her face pale but exhilarated. "The dirty jump got us here, but she's pissed. The tunneler needs a full 48 hours to cool down before we can even think about another cascade. We're here, Kale, but we're stuck here until we can fix it or find a clean exit." "Sensors." "Messy," Jin reported, his fingers flying. "The Valar were right about one thing. This place is chaos. Their clean sensors would be useless, but our primitive systems are working," he smiled. "The dirty LiDAR is cutting through the dust. The long-range grav sensors are feeling the micro-singularities, and he chuckled, the optical telescope is seeing light." "Ethel's Rest," Kale said. "Find it." "On it." The anvil pushed into the veil, not with grace but with power. Her main fusion engines, designed for this kind of brute force thrust, ignited, a controlled roaring fire that pushed the brick through the mud. A Valar ship would have been finessing the currents. The anvil was making its own. "It's like driving a truck through a ballroom," Eva muttered, watching the energy readouts. "We're not elegant, but damn, we are thorough." It took 4 hours. 4 hours of the ship shuddering as it pushed through temporal distortions. 4 hours of the hull screaming as it was pelted by micrometeors. "I have something," Jin said, his voice suddenly tense. "Ahead, Ethel's Rest, or what's left of it." The anvil broke through a final, thick wall of green dust. The colony was gone. Ethel's Rest had been a series of biodomes nestled on a large, stable asteroid. Now, it was a graveyard. The domes were shattered. The asteroid was cracked in two. Debris, frozen bodies, and scraps of metal drifted in a lazy, horrifying orbit. And it was not deserted. "Contacts," Jin yelled, his voice cracking. "Multiple contacts there, small, fast." On the view screen, they appeared. They looked like thorns. Black, jagged, asymmetrical ships, none larger than a human fighter. They were crawling over the wreckage, picking at it. "I've never seen that configuration," Kale said, his blood running cold. "Hilotl, Kathur, no." "They're biomechanical," Eva whispered, staring at a magnified feed. "Look, the hulls, they're not welded, they're grown like bone and chitin." The Zylok, Kale breathed. The name was a rumor, a ghost story told by traders in the Outer Rim, a swarm that consumed ships, strip-mined colonies, and left nothing. No one in the civilized Inner Ring believed they were real. They were too messy, too barbaric. The laughter from the Prismati hub felt like a distant, sickening echo. They're laughable, Jin said, his voice trembling. They're tiny, they don't even have shields, my sensors are reading. Nothing, no energy signatures, just mass. Kale, Eva said, her eyes wide. They're the same as us, they're primitive, they're kinetic. The Zylok swarm, having noticed the anvil, turned. As one. 100 Thorn ships disengaged from the wreckage and accelerated. They didn't fire lasers, they didn't fire plasma. They fired shards. Incoming, Jin shouted. Kinetic impact. Brace, Kale roared. The first volley hit. It was not the hiss of a laser on a shield. It was the sound of 100 gravel trucks hitting the hull at once. Thud, thud, pang, crunch. The anvil shook violently. Alarms blared. Hull status, Kale yelled. Paints scratched, Captain, the damage control officer reported, his voice filled with pure, unadulterated shock. Ablative plating, Deck 4, Section 1, registered. 0 penetration, the shards, they just bounced. On the view screen, the Zylok swarm, having seen their first attack do nothing, regrouped. Kale Rourke stood up. He walked to the tactical station. They think we're a soft target, Kale said. They think we're a fat, slow freighter, just like Tethys Atrid, just like the Hylotl. They're laughing, Jin. I can feel them laughing. He looked at his crew. Their faces were pale but alive. Adrenaline was high. Well, Kale said, a grim, cold smile spreading across his face. The laughter dies now. He hit the shipwide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We are condition red. Marine detachment, prepare for grounding. This is not a drill. We are at war. He turned back to the tactical officer. Lieutenant Jin, you find those little ships laughable. Sir, yes, sir, Jin stammered. Good, Kale said. Let's return the joke. He pointed to the tactical display. They're primitive, we're primitive. Let's see who's better at it. Eva. Sir, activate the ablative plating's secondary function. Mjolnir protocol. Eva's eyes lit up. Aye, sir, Mjolnir protocol energizing the grid. And Mr. Jin, Kale said, his voice dropping to a predatory whisper. You said we use kinetic slug throwers. That's not entirely accurate. Show them the fire. Jin's hands flew, unlocking weapon ports, all batteries, free. The anvil, the insult to physics, changed. Panels which had looked like simple, ugly hull plating slid back. 4 massive, quad-barreled turrets that had been hidden flush with the hull, emerged. They were not laser emitters. They were guns. Massive, heavy-duty railguns. The Zylok are confused, sir, Jin reported, his voice shaking with excitement. They're slowing down. They're wondering why the freighter has teeth, Kale said. Fire battery 1, annihilate. The anvil spoke. It was not a pew-pew sound. It was a THOOM, a deep, resonate, physical roar that shook the ship. The first railgun turret unleashed a volley of 50-kilogram tungsten carbide slugs at 10% the speed of light. The lead Zylok Thorn ship didn't explode. It disintegrated. The kinetic energy was so absolute that the ship and the 2 ships behind it were shattered into a cloud of metal and chitin. Battery 2, fire. THOOM. Another 3 ships, gone. This is not a fight, Jin was yelling, laughing. This is an execution. The Zylok, in their thousands of years of swarming, clean ships with energy shields, had never encountered this. They had never hit a ship made of solid metal 3 meters thick. And they had never been shot at by solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. Their laughter died. The swarm panicked. They broke formation. They scattered. They're running, Eva said, her face lit by the glow of the tactical display. They're not running, Kale said, his eyes cold. They're fleeing. They just met something uglier and louder than they are. He pointed to the asteroid. Marine detachment, I want boots on the ground. Sergeant Thorn, find survivors, the Zylok, they harvest, I want to know what. A new transmission came in. A Marine, his face grimed, his helmet under his arm. Sergeant Elias Thorn, sir, we're suited, but sensors are picking up movement inside the main, cracked open dome. Life signs faint, but human. "Get them, Thorn," Kale ordered. "Get them all." "We're on our way, sir," Thorn said. "But we're also picking up other life signs, non-human, lots of them, down in the asteroid's core, the Xyloch. They weren't just picking at the colony, Captain, they were digging." Kale looked at the tactical display. The Xyloch swarm was gone, but the feeling of dread was just beginning. "Eva," Kale said, "that FTL drive, I want it fixed. 48 hours is too long." Because the swarm was just the beginning. The laughter had died, but the war, the fire, was just beginning. Sergeant Elias Thorn was a man who appreciated the Anvil's philosophy. He was not an elegant man. He was a slab of muscle and scar tissue, encased in dark gray, primitive powered armor that whirred and clanked when he moved. It didn't have force fields, it had plates. His weapon was not a plasma caster, it was a Grendel 45, a kinetic slug shotgun that fired rounds the size of a human thumb. It was loud, it was messy, and like the Anvil, it was brutally effective. "Valkyrie 1 to Anvil," Thorn's voice, a gravelly baritone, crackled over the comm. "We are on the surface of Ethel's Rest, and gods." Kale and the bridge crew watched Thorn's helmet cam feed. The ground was a zero-G hellscape of shattered biodome plastics, frozen hydroponics, and personal effects. The Xyloch Thorn ships had used bioacid to melt the domes before the kinetic shards had shattered them. "It's visceral," Jin whispered, his face pale. The laughter from the railgun victory was gone. "They didn't just break it," Eva murmured. "They hated it." "Valkyrie 1, move," Kale ordered, his voice tight. "Find the life signs." Thorn and his squad of 4 Marines used their clumsy mag boots to stomp their way across the hull of a dead freighter, their heavy armor thruster packs firing in short, dirty bursts of chemical propellant. They were not gliding, they were leaping. "In here, sir," Thorn said. He kicked open a buckled hatch marked Emergency Shelter 3. The helmet cam light cut through the dark. They were alive. About 30 of them huddled together, their faces pale and frost-rimed from the failing life support. A mix of humans and Signians, the latter's iridescent skin dull with terror. We thought you were them," a woman gasped, clutching a child. "We saw the fire, the noise." "That was our noise, ma'am," Thorn said, his voice surprisingly gentle as he broke a ration pack's heater. "That was the HFS Anvil. We're getting you home." As the Marines began triaging the survivors, Kale turned his attention to the other signal. "Eva, the life signs, the non-human ones. Thorn said they were in the asteroid's core." "I'm trying to get a lock," Eva said, her console chirping. "This whole place is a mess of feedback. The Xyloch weren't just digging, Kale, they were building. The Thorn ships were just workers, they were. They were hollowing out the asteroid, I'm reading. Organic construction, massive power signatures, it's a hive." "A hive?" "They weren't raiding Ethel's Rest," Kale said, the cold realization dawning. "They were assimilating it, they were setting up." "Captain," Jin shouted, his voice high with panic. New contact, it's, oh gods, Kale, it's big, it just grew out of the asteroid's core." The Anvil's main view screen, which had been focused on the debris field, tilted down. From the wound in the asteroid, a new Xyloch ship was emerging. It was not a Thorn ship. It was a brood mother. The name was apt. It was a 50-kilometer thing of pulsating, chitinous black metal and angry organocred lights. It didn't look like a ship. It looked like a crustacean had mated with a cathedral. It was all spikes, asymmetrical, and covered in the smaller Thorn ships, which were docking with its pockmarked hull. It ignored the Anvil. It turned with a slow, agonizing grace toward the emergency shelter where Thorn's team was. "No," Kale whispered. It's heard them," Eva said, her face ashen. "The survivors, their life signs, it's hunting them." "It's hurting," Kale corrected, his mind racing. "It let the Thorn ships run, it wanted us to split our attention, it wanted us to find the survivors so it could collect us all." A new weapon appeared on the broodmother. It wasn't a railgun, it was a maw. A vast circular opening that began to glow with a sickly, bioluminescent green. "Energy readings, off the charts," Jin screamed. It's a plasma acid projector. It's not shooting at Thorn, it's melting the entire asteroid fragment." "Thorn," Kale roared into the comm. "Get out of there, evac now." "Negative, Captain." Thorn's voice was grim but calm. The feed showed him and his squad welding the shelter door shut. We can't move them, sir. Too many wounded. We're holding, we'll give you a target." Elias, damn it, that is an order. Can't Kale, Thorne said, using the captain's first name, a breach of protocol that screamed finality. My armor, it's anchored to the hull. Mjolnir protocol, right? Let's show him what real ablative plating looks like. Just get this thing. The brood mother fired. A torrent of green, incandescent acid washed over the asteroid. Thorne's camera dissolved into static. The bridge of the anvil was silent. The crew stared at the nothingness where their marines had been. Jin was weeping, his shoulders shaking. Eva Tolson was white-knuckling her console, her eyes squeezed shut. Kalen Rourke did not weep. His grief was cold, it was hard, it was fusion core hot. He looked at the brood mother, now turning its attention to the anvil. The maw was pulsating, recharging. Mr. Jin, Kale said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Target that, maw. Sir, Jin sniffed, wiping his face. All batteries, Mjolnir protocol, fire everything. It's out of range, sir, Jin said. The railguns, the slugs will get there, but they'll dodge, we can't hit it. We're not hitting it, Mr. Jin, Kale said. We're distracting it. Kale, what are you? Eva began. Eva, Kale said, not looking at her. The tunneler, you said 48 hours. It is, Kale, it's cold, it's broken. It's not broken, Kale said. It's a cascade drive, it's a bomb, it's designed to be dirty. I don't want a jump, I want a misfire. Eva's eyes went wide. Oh no, Kale, you're not. Helm, Kale roared. All engines, full reverse, get us away from it. Sir, reverse. Do it. The anvil groaned, its main engines firing forward, slowing the brick, and starting to pull it back into the Veil's miasma. The brood mother, seeing its prey fleeing, followed. It was faster than Kale had thought. It was chasing them. It's working, Kale, Eva yelled, her hands flying. I'm bypassing the cooling rods, I'm forcing the singularity. It's not spinning, Kale, it's unstable. I know, Kale gritted, his own hands on the arms of his chair. I'm counting on it. It's in range, Jin shouted. The maw, it's glowing again, it's going to fire. Helm, Kale yelled, shut down the main engines. SIR. Shut THEM down. The anvil's engines died. The 400-meter brick, which had been desperately fleeing, suddenly became a dead, motionless target. On the view screen, the brood mother, confused by the sudden stop, glided forward, its own momentum carrying it. The maw was open, green-hot, ready to vaporize the human ship. Wait for it, Kale whispered. The Zylok ship was close, so close Kale could see the chitin plating flexing. Wait. The green plasma acid erupted from the maw. EVA now. Firing the T1NELER. Eva Tolson slammed the barbaric lever down. The Cascade tunneler detonated. It was not a jump, it was an explosion. But it wasn't an outward explosion, it was an inward one. The Cascade tunneler was designed to punch a hole in space. The dirty part was supposed to be contained. This was uncontained. The anvil jumped. It jumped 10 kilometers. It rematerialized directly behind the Zylok brood mother, having phased through the incoming plasma acid attack. The dirty jump, the misfire, had been used as a short-range blink. The Zylok brood mother, its most powerful weapon spent, was suddenly staring at an empty patch of space. Kale, Eva gasped, her hands shaking. The feedback, it's fried the tunneler for good. The anvil was stuck here. It's turning, sir, Jin whispered, his voice full of awe. It's confused. It will be, Kale said. He stood up. He looked at the aft view at the brood mother's engines. They were massive, organic, exposed. Eva, Kale said. Thorne, he gave us a target. He bought us. This, we are not wasting it. Reroute. All, power, all of it, from life support, from inertial dampeners, from everything. Kale, where? Kale pointed to the tactical display. To the main engines, we are not a brick, Sparky. He grinned, a terrifying, humorless expression. We are the hammer. The anvil, its FTL drive destroyed, its marines gone, its crew running on fury turned. And its main fusion engine began to glow, white-hot. The tactical situation was a death sentence. The HFS Anvil was a ship of the line with no FTL, dwindling life support, and a crew running on grief-fueled adrenaline. The Zylok brood mother was a 50-kilometer nightmare, wounded in its pride but not, it seemed, in its hull. It was slowly turning its massive, spined body in the nebula, its dozens of smaller organic weapon ports now glowing with the same green, acidic light as its main cannon. The blink maneuver had been a miracle of desperation, but it had cost them their only way home. Kale, the core is unstable, Eva Tolson said, her voice tight, her fingers flying over a console that was now actively sparking. I've rerouted everything to the main drive. Life support is on chemical scrubbers, artificial gravity is gone, and the inertial dampeners are at 10%. When you do whatever it is you're planning, it's going to hurt. Kale didn't answer. He was floating slightly out of his command chair, pulling himself back down by the straps. The bridge was a chaotic scene of floating data slates, coffee bulbs, and crew members pulling themselves from station to station. The anvil was now truly primitive. The brood mother is broadcasting, sir, Jin said, his voice a strained whisper. He was strapped to his console, his face pale. It's not a language, it's psychic, it's screaming. A low, vibrating thrum filled the bridge. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling. It was the feeling of infinite cold hunger. It was the memory of Thorn's squad melting. You are meat, you are fuel, you are laughable. It's using the word, sir, Jin said, his eyes wide with terror. It's learned it from us, from the survivors. It thinks we're afraid, Kale said. He looked at the view screen. The brood mother had stopped turning. It was facing them. Its weapon ports were all open. It's a trap, Kale, Eva yelled. It's goading us. It wants us to attack. Look at its plating. It's thicker than ours. You're right, Sparky, Kale said, his voice calm. It is a trap. It wants us to fire our Mjolnir railguns. It wants us to thud against its hull, just like its Thorn ships thudded against ours. It learned. It adapted. It knows kinetic weapons. He pointed to the screen. But it has made a mistake, a Valar mistake. Sir, Jin asked. It is symmetrical, Kale said. It is designed. It has a front. It has a back. It has logic. It thinks. We think the same way. He unstrapped himself from his chair. He floated over to the helm. Lieutenant, Kale said, your primitive hands, I need them. We are going to do something illogical. The broodmother fired, not its main cannon. A volley of hundreds of smaller bioacid torpedoes. They streaked toward the anvil. Mr. Jin, Kale roared, point defense, all of them. Gatling protocol, clear a path. Kale was not talking about the railguns. He was talking about the other laughable human tech. The anvil, in addition to its main guns, was covered in dozens of smaller rotary-barrel kinetic slug throwers, the real point defense. The anvil erupted in a 360-degree storm of lead. The Grendel shotguns Thorn had loved, these were the ship-sized versions. They filled the space around the anvil with a cloud of metal. The acid torpedoes hit the metal cloud. They detonated prematurely, splashing harmlessly against the kinetic shield. It was messy. It was loud, it was wasteful. And it worked. The path is clear, sir, Jin screamed, firing the guns manually. Eva, Kale yelled, the hammer strike. Kale, no, the G-forces, the crew. We are the crew, Eva, Kale roared back. We are the anvil, we are the fire, do it. Eva Tolson slammed her entire forearm on a physical red lever. The anvil's main fusion core detonated in a controlled burn, straight out of its main engine. The anvil was not a brick, it was not a hammer. It was a bullet. The 400-meter ship accelerated from a dead stop to 20% the speed of light, in 3 seconds. The G-forces were apocalyptic. On the bridge, the crew were not pushed into their seats, they were slammed. Kale felt his ribs crack. Jin blacked out for a second. The ship itself screamed, the metal groaning as it fought to stay in one piece. The brood mother, so confident in its trap, had no time to react. The anvil was not aiming for the maw. It was not aiming for the weapon ports. Kalen Rourke, his vision tunneling, his body breaking, was steering the anvil. At the spike. The brood mother, in its logical design, had a massive 5-kilometer-long prow, a spike. That looked like a crustacean's horn. It was aesthetic. It was intimidating. It was also a weakness. The anvil hit the spike. Not head-on. Kale grazed it. He slid the anvil along the length of the 5-kilometer spike, like a skater grinding a rail. The anvil's laughable 3-meter-thick ablative hull met the Xylox biochitin at 20% the speed of light. The friction was absolute. The anvil's port side vaporized. The spike it was grinding, superheated, melted, and snapped. The anvil was crippled. Its port side was gone. It was venting atmosphere. But it was past the prow. It was inside the brood mother's defenses. It was tumbling out of control, right in front of the brood mother's face. Kale, Eva gasped, blood streaming from her nose. "We're dead." No, Kale spat, blood coating his teeth. "We're not elegant." He looked at the tactical display. The anvil was tumbling, the brood mother's main weapon. The maw was right there, staring at them, charging. This was it. The Xyloc had won. It had waited. It had outthought them. "Sir," Jin whispered, his voice broken, it's beautiful in a horrible way." Kale looked the brood mother. It was opening, not just the maw, the entire front of the ship was peeling open like a flower. It's not a ship," Eva whispered, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. "Kale, it's an egg, it's hatching." The revelation, the turning point, was not a betrayal. It was biology. The brood mother wasn't a battleship, it was a womb. The thorns were just bobbies. This was the queen, and it was revealing itself. In the center of the flower was not a gun. It was a thing, a creature, a being of pure psychic malice. It looked at the anvil, and the anvil's primitive analog systems died. The lights, the power, the engines. Everything. The anvil was dead in the water. The queen looked at Kale. "I see, you, human, you are so loud and so small." The laughter was justified. The anvil was dead. The crew was alive, trapped in a tomb, staring at the god queen of the Xyloc. Kale smiled, a bloody, broken-toothed grin. "Eva," he whispered, his voice cracking. "The anvil, she has a levy right." Eva stared at him. "Kale." "The anvil, she's not elegant," Kale coughed. She leaks, right?" High Delegate Tethys said. "She leaks radiation." Eva's eyes widened. "She leaks hard radiation," Kale whispered, "from her primitive fusion core." He looked at the queen. "We are not a warship, you bitch." He slammed his broken hand on a physical red button. It was not connected to any system. It was connected, physically, mechanically, to the fusion cores, containment rods. It was the laughable manual scram button. "We are a bomb," Kale Rourke whispered. And the anvil's unshielded, leaking, dirty fusion core went supercritical. There was no time for the Xyloc queen to process the logic of suicide. Its ancient psychic mind, which had consumed the memories of 1,000 species, had never encountered an enemy that treated its own life and ship as a disposable round of ammunition. It saw the anvil as a failure, a dead, broken thing that had failed in its hammer strike. The queen felt Kale's bloody, defiant grin as a psychic insult. It began to unfurl its own power, a wave of pure biopsychic energy to flay the minds of the humans before it ate their ship. It was too slow. Kale's broken, physical hand on the physical, mechanical button was faster than the queen's thought. The manual scram was a lie. It wasn't a scram. It was a dump. It was the last desperate FU of a Fortitude-class engineer. It was designed to do one thing. In the event of capture, it instantly vented the entire, superheated, uncontained plasma core out of the ship in all directions. The anvil vaporized. It did not explode in a fireball. It detonated in a star. A 400-meter-long, primitive, leaking fusion core, suddenly uncontained, 1 kilometer from the unshielded, organic open face of the Xyloc queen. The light was absolute. On the anvil's bridge, Kale Rourke's last sensation was not pain. It was warmth. He saw, for a microsecond, the shock, the pure, unadulterated terror in the queen's mind. Laughter, Kale thought, dies. The Xyloc queen screamed. It was a psychic sound that tore through the Gordian veil. It was a sound of agony and disbelief. The star, the sun, that had been the anvil, washed over it. The flower petals of the brood mother incinerated. The queen, the psychic god, was bathed in pure, unfiltered fusion. The fire burned psychic energy. The brood mother, the 50-kilometer womb, Convulsed, the acid ports fired randomly, the hull cracked. The anvil was gone, vapor atoms. But it had done its job. The queen was blinded, burned, wounded. The brood mother was mortally wounded. It began to drift, its organic engines sputtered. It was dying. 5 days later, the luminous current, the Valar flagship, glided into the Gordian Vale. It was not a clean entry. It was pushed by a brute force, human-designed. Bifrost shield, a prototype that Terrasol had given the Valar as a gift after the Prismati incident. Ambassador Tethys Atrid was on the bridge. He was not in his robes. He was in a Valar pressure suit. It was uncomfortable for him. "This place," Tethys chimed, his voice flat. "It hurts." "We are at the coordinates, Ambassador," his Valar helm master said, his own light dim. On the view screen was the wreckage. The debris field of the Xyloc fleet, the shattered thorns. The cracked husk of Ethel's Rest. And it. The corpse. The 50-kilometer brood mother, it was dead, it was drifting, it was already being consumed by nebula scavengers. "The queen is dead," Tethys whispered. "The hive is silent. The Xyloc threat in this sector is over." "Ambassador," the helm master said, "sensors are detecting something, a beacon. A human beacon. Number Ambassador, a Valar, one a lifeboat beacon." "That is illogical." The luminous current glided closer to the wreckage of the anvil. There was nothing left. No, not nothing. There was something. A piece. A single, charred, twisted piece of 3-meter-thick ablative hull plating. It was floating. And on it were figures. Tethys Atrid zoomed the view screen. It was not a lifeboat. It was Sergeant Elias Thorne. And his squad. And 30 survivors. They were not dead. Thorne's Mjolnir armor had anchored to the asteroid when the acid weapon had fired. It had melted the asteroid around them. It had not melted Thorne's armor. It had not melted the shelter he had braced with his back. He had held against the acid. He had held against the detonation of the anvil. He was floating on a piece of rock tethered to 30 terrified survivors. He had one flickering light on his helmet. He was waving. Ambassador Tethys Atrid stared. His Valar mind could not process. "A warship," Tethys whispered. He called it a warship. He looked at the corpse of the God Queen. He looked at the survivors tethered to one stubborn man in primitive armor. "It wasn't a warship," Tethys Atrid chimed, his voice breaking with a new emotion. "Terror? No. Oz. It was an anvil, a thing you pound other things on." He looked at the survivors. "Helm Master, activate the asterisk tractor, beam the brute force human one, the one they gave us." "Ambassador, it is so loud." "Do it," Tethys Atrid roared. The luminous current thrummed with a new ugly human sound. And it pulled the survivors home. The Prismati trade hub was, for the first time in its 500-year history, silent. The observation dome was packed. The Hylotl, the Jaskar, the Cathur, the Signian Compact. Everyone was there. They were not tittering. They were not laughing. They were watching. In the center of the dome, High Delegate Tethys Atrid stood. His crystalline form was different. It was dimmer, its usual arrogant inner light replaced by a respectful, low-frequency thrum. He was not addressing the delegates. He was addressing Sergeant Elias Thorne. Thorne was not in his armor. He was in a simple, dark gray fatigue uniform. His left arm was in a bioregenerative cast. His face was a map of new scars and old grief. Beside him, the human and Signian survivors of Ethel's Rest stood, wrapped in thermal blankets, their eyes wide and haunted. A single, charred, twisted piece of metal sat in the center of the dome. It was the only piece of the HFS anvil that had been recovered. It was 3 meters thick, scarred by acid and pitted by kinetic impacts. It was ugly. And the delegates were touching it. One by one they were approaching it, running their hands, talons, and pseudopods over it, as if it were a holy relic. "We of the Valar hegemony," Tethys Atrid began, his chiming voice huskier than any had ever heard it. "We," laughed. He looked at Thorn. "We mocked your ships, we called them barbaric, primitive insults to physics." He gestured to the relic. "The anvil was not a ship," Tethys said. "We have concluded this a ship is a vessel, it carries it, moves. The anvil did not just move." He turned to the delegates. The anvil was a statement. It was Captain Cailan Rurk's final argument. His voice rose. "We build our ships of light and harmony to avoid the darkness. We build shields to deflect the unpleasant. We have forgotten that the universe is not harmonious. It is not kind." He looked at Thorn. "The humans remember they never forgot. They do not build ships to avoid the darkness. They build their ships out of the darkness. They build anvils from metal and fire and spite." He paused. "Captain Kuuk and his crew, Eva Tolson, Lieutenant Jin, they are gone. They sacrificed themselves to save these," he gestured, "to the survivors. But more than that, they sacrificed themselves to kill a god queen that we, the inner ring, refused to believe existed." Tethys Atrid bowed. It was not a dip of the head, it was a full Valar obeisance. His crystalline forehead touched the crystal floor. The entire dome gasped. No one had ever seen a Valar do this. Sergeant Thorn stepped forward. He put his good hand on Tethys Atrid's shoulder. "Get up, Ambassador," Thorn's gravelly voice echoed. Tethys Atrid rose. "We failed you," Tethys chimed. "No," Thorn said, his voice raw. "You didn't understand. We don't build our ships to be laughed at. We build them to make sure we get to laugh last." He looked at the relic. The anvil wasn't a statement. She wasn't a bomb. She wasn't a warship. He patted the charred metal. She was a lifeboat. She was home, and she did her job. She got us home. He looked at the survivors, clutching each other. Captain Rurk, he knew the price. We all did. The galaxy can laugh all it wants. It doesn't matter. Laughter is clean. It's light. It doesn't weigh anything. He slapped the metal relic. The thud echoed in the silence. "But mass," Thorn whispered. This matters. We are humanity. We have mass. We are heavy, and we are not going anywhere." Tethys Atrid looked at the relic. He looked at Thorn. "The Valar hegemony," Tethys chimed, his voice strong. "Now we request a new treaty. We wish to purchase Fortitude-class vessels." Thorn laughed. It was a short, harsh, ugly sound. "We don't sell our ships, Ambassador," Thorn said. He grinned. "But we are hearing engineers." The laughter in the galaxy had died. The fire had burned. And now this rebuilding began. With human hands and Valar aesthetics. The galaxy would never be the same.